It's almost that time, March Madness. We're still in February, excuse me. Don't want to get to April too fast because that's the Final Four.
Tell me who
Uh,
the winner is. Tell me who the winner is.
yeah, it's in Houston, so
Yeah.
they might have an edge.
Ah.
Wouldn't it be nice to have the Final Four? They'll never do it because now you have to have these Final Fours with the football stadiums, and they got to get like 50,000 people in there. But it would be awesome to have the Final Four at Madison Square Garden.
Well, that would be real nice. A little bit of a throwback type thing. It would be
Yeah,
real nice. I
yeah, they'll
could I
never do
could
it.
really dig that.
Yeah. All right, so March is just in about actually 5 days, 6 days from now of us recording this show, and that's awesome. It's an awesome time of year, Mark. We haven't really, we talked Super Bowl and NFL playoffs, and it's been a little bit since we talked college football. We referenced this point in time, and now it's here. And we've had more than enough time to kind of get up to speed on what's going on in college basketball. And I'll say, even though I don't follow it as religiously as, say, football the first month or so, once we get to like this point in the season, I'm already just like, can we get on with the tournament already? I'm just like, and it's only like 20, whatever, 5 games, whatever it is, 27 game schedule. But it just seems like, you know how people say, well, you diminish the regular season and this and that. And it's like, you know what? I wouldn't mind if there are actually less regular season games in a way. Let's just get to this tournament. It's just so much fun and everybody wants to get there that, I see teams, and I think this actually happens to players as well. I think teams hit walls, where they're kind of like, kind of burnt out. They have the finals that go on during the college basketball season. They got the holidays. I think right now there's a lot of teams that just have kind of hit these walls. And it's like, I think they feel the same way we do.
Well, I think you could say really the same thing about the NBA in a sense.
Oh, that's for sure.
Major League Baseball for sure.
Yes.
At least college basketball has their conference tournaments,
Yeah.
which, is a good indicator for things to come. But let's get to the conference tournaments. Let's get this baby in the water here. This is beginning to percolate here.
Yeah.
We want to get to the end of the regular season. I agree wholeheartedly.
It's almost too bad that they couldn't figure out a way to have like the conference tournament spread out a little bit more. Have like a month of conference college basketball tournaments or something. I know they can't do it. It's not fair to, and I get that. It's just, I just wish that, because some of these tournaments, they happen so fast, especially the teams, and I'm not saying teams that aren't that good deserve anything, but, you even get some average teams have to go through some crazy hoops in order, no pun intended, in order to win a conference championship. They have to win like 4 games in 4 nights or something like that. It's just crazy.
Yeah, that's one of the big handicapping edges or tools is finding those teams that had to do just that had to take 4 games in 4 days to win the title. And they were in that 4th game. And it's really some nice handicapping edges inside that 4th game, depending upon how they got there. But that's going to be forthcoming. We're gonna see all that. But I'm like you, I'm jonesing, waiting for that to happen here. Right now, we're kind of slugging our way through, especially these lower half-tier teams in the conferences that really aren't going to be going anywhere, aren't going to be doing anything. What do we care about Cal Davis and Cal Riverside at this particular stage of the basketball season? We don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, Cal Riverside might make the tournament this year, so
they
watch
might.
out.
Yes, they might.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, actually I should say like, it's probably been like 10 years ago, I started to forecast and say, you know what, next couple of years, you watch this, the amount of players that go from, 1 year or 2 years and then go right to the NBA. It's going to catch up to college basketball, and we're going to start getting a lot more parity at the top because of it. And for the first like 5 or 6 years of me saying it, it never happened. It's like, boy, it's just, there's still power teams. Still, whoever's like number 1 or number 2 into the tournament, usually one of those dominant teams makes it and usually wins it. But I think we're finally there, Mark, because this season, there are no dominant teams. There is not one team that I look at, and I know Houston's got a good record and Alabama's got a good, but come on, let's be serious. We're talking about Houston and Alabama. There's no teams in college basketball right now where you go into this tournament and you go, why can't team 25 win the national championship? I think we're getting to that point where we can actually say that we're going to in the next year or two, we're going to get some team's going to win the national championship that's not even ranked like in the final top 20 going into the tournament.
That could well be, and this could be the year. The question is it parity or is it mediocrity?
Both.
That's taking hold here right now. Like you say, there's no team I think any team is fearful of, and no team I'm afraid to step in front of when it comes to, trying to take them down, either cash a ticket or see them lose a basketball game. So that does kind of keep the thing wide open for sure. And
good for us.
Yes, it is good for us. And as we wind down the stretch, getting into these conference tournaments here, they end up being good indicators for us about teams that are moving forward with momentum. And that's really good for a lot of these mid-major conference teams that close out on a bang that way. They're the guys that end up being the famous 12 seeds.
Yep.
Who end up taking on these 5 seeds, and they're playing with such good positive momentum. And the 5 seeds probably had their eyes on a 1 or 2 or 3 seed. They lost and they got dropped down, and all of a sudden, boom! Here comes your 12-5 upset. So
yeah, and I think we're going to start getting more 13 upsets and 14 upsets, and that's going to be great. So you look at right now at the major conferences, and because here's the thing, the top 2 teams right now, Houston, Alabama. Okay, but this just shows you where the parity is. So Houston is playing in what? The American.
Yes.
The American. So their competition is not very good. Alabama is playing in a weak SEC this year. Weak. It's weak. Matter of fact, the ACC is weak this year because Duke and North Carolina aren't any good. So, again, that just shows you that there's that parity deal. So, like, if you start at the top, the Big 12, and I'm okay with saying, based on the regular season, for what we see, the Big 12 looks like they could be the best conference in college basketball. And I only say could because, again, I see these teams play, and I don't know. I don't think we won't know until the tournament when they start playing against these other conferences and we start getting a feel, because even though the Big Ten has been very disappointing in years past, what I like about the Big Ten this year is that besides Purdue, there's like 7 or 8 teams that could all be like the second best team in the Big Ten. And I wonder whether or not when those teams, all of them, get to the tournament, I wonder whether or not they're going to, because they're so competitively solid, will that be better than will it be better than, say, the 5th or 6th? Like, for instance, Baylor. Baylor made it almost like to 5th, I think, last week, and then 9th the week after that. And they lost the last 2 games. And I'm going, when they made that move, I just couldn't believe it, because I've watched Baylor play this year, and it's like, this is not a top 10 team. They're just not. And as soon as they get back into the top 10, they've lost the last 2. And I don't think it's because of the fact that the Big 12 is so strong that look what happens when Baylor plays the teams they got to play. I just shows you that there's, just as you said, there's more mediocrity than anything else. And I just think it's going to make it that much more interesting when you find out, when you get to the tournament and these conferences play each other.
Well, you're looking across the board at these conferences. You have your Power 5, what we call in football, Power 5 conferences. We've also got, in college basketball, we've got other top-tiered conferences, the Big East, other conferences that weren't being mentioned.
Besides, you mean the top 5?
Yeah, without the Power 5, exactly.
Big East, American, Atlantic 10.
Yes, yeah. Okay, and but they do sort of come out of the what you call the mid-majors.
Yes.
The Big East, maybe not. They might want to argue that.
Yep.
But nonetheless, there's some teams in there that I think end up being value, and those are the guys you end up shopping for a ticket, for a price in the NCAA tournament. You kind of want to do your shopping just about right now, because when you get into the conference tournaments and they win a conference tournament, then all of a sudden you're going to get half the price you would have gotten if you'd eyeballed them right now at this particular stage of where they're at in the season here. You mentioned the Big 12 conference here. You take a look, there's 8 teams in the Big 12 conference that rank in the top 40 of the Ken Palm rankings. And the Ken Palm rankings are highly esteemed, and they're looked upon by the NCAA tournament for seeding and everything else about as high as any other mention. And that's why I keep referring to the Ken Palm ratings, because we're going to be seeing these teams when the seeding comes about. And they've got, like I say, 8 teams in the top 40 that are coming out of the Big 12 conference. You mentioned about conferences being down this year. My goodness, the ACC, what has happened to them? I mean, their top
Oh,
team in Ken Palm rank is 29th ranked. That's Miami of Florida. My goodness. And then you got the Southeast Conference. Where did they fall off to?
yeah.
What did they eat and die? I mean, there's only 2 teams in the Southeast Conference that he mentions in the top 40 teams. I should say the ACC, I meant. What happened to that conference?
It
So
surprises me that Calipari. I mean, I understand Krzyzewski and Duke with him gone. I don't understand what's happened to Calipari. How come all of a sudden Kentucky? I would have figured they'd be a dominant type of top 10 like Kansas. I'd figure. I don't know. That's strange. I'm really surprised about why all of a sudden things have dropped off there.
Well, they're going to make the tournament. They're 32nd
Sure,
ranked in the Ken Palm, and they're going to win 20 games, 22 games, and their name and reputation is going to get them there. The question is, will they be able to do anything? And they
probably
haven't.
not.
Maybe they haven't proven anything all
No.
year long. No, it's just going to be a name and reputation type basketball team. I think there's only 2 teams in the SEC that have what I would call Elite Eight ability. That would be Alabama and Tennessee. You might make a case for Arkansas or Auburn.
Texas A&M is.
Maybe A&M, right? But I think the 2 that are Elite Eight caliber would be Alabama and Tennessee coming out of the SEC conference here. You could take it over to the ACC side of things. I mentioned Miami of Florida being 29th ranked there. Who's behind them? Virginia. I can only mention them because they do bring something to the table that I love backing in every conference NCAA March Madness tournament. Those are teams that have 5 returning starters from the previous year. They're very experienced, and you get a lot of good play. You get a lot of mileage from these 5 returning starter teams when it gets to be NCAA tournament time. Virginia is one of those teams. They could end up being the surprise team out of the ACC, although I think they're vastly overrated. But they do have that commodity, that one thing. Talking about 5 returning starters inside the Big 12 conference, there's a guy inside that Big 12 conference here that's going to carry a pretty nice hefty price tag. That is a 5 returning starter team that I think can do some damage, and that would be TCU. Uh, that basketball team, now that they're on back-to-back losses as we're speaking here right now, but they were beginning to make their move here, and I think they're a team you have to watch here as well. So Kansas is the top, followed maybe by Texas and Baylor, but keep an eye out for TCU out of the Big 12 conference.
Yeah, when you in the ACC, the one team I really actually like what NC State's done. They've quietly had a nice season. No doubt, the way it's turning out, Miami has been the most impressive at this point. And considering how far they got last year, I see them as. I mean, why is Miami 45-1? Now that's a great pick right there, futures pick. Why are they 45-1 and Virginia say 28-1 in the same conference when Miami I just think is better than Virginia, or at least on par with Virginia, and Miami made the run last year.
Yeah, that's what's neat, Greg, is they made the run. The experience is there. The coach is
Yes.
there. He's got that experience. He's the guy you want to buy, Miami of Florida, out of the ACC. And I'm going to say this also about inside the ACC. You mentioned NC State; they're noteworthy. People are dismissing Duke, and I would say that would be a mistake if you dismiss Duke for a couple of reasons. Number one, most of the players there were brought in by Coach K. Number two, John Shire, the coach who took over for this program here, he got to 20 wins faster with Duke than any other coach in Duke history did in the amount of games it took him to win 20 games. It's not a fluke with what's going on there, and I think they have the potential, if for no other reason, they do nothing but recruit these 4 and 5 star basketball players. All their roster is made up of all American McDonald's players. So you have to take that into consideration. You're going to get a hefty tag there with Duke. They're one of the teams that I bought early just because of that reason.
It's taken forever because all we've ever heard when Gonzaga became this powerhouse from the WCC is you had this second place St. Mary's program, and they'd get to the tournament a lot. And a lot of times it's like, oh, come on, they didn't even deserve to be in the tournament. Every time they get in, they always get bounced out. They're only in because they beat up everybody in the WCC. But when they play outside the WCC, they don't beat anybody. For the first time ever, they're better than Gonzaga. And I actually think they have a realistic chance of making a run. I really do. They've got that freshman guard that is a phenomenal player. And we're always looking for those. You got to find those really clutch kids at this time of year, and St. Mary's has it. I don't know. I think St. Mary's might be a very interesting team to keep an eye on.
I think what's interesting about them, Greg, is the fact that right now they're a longer price than Gonzaga is.
Yeah, right.
Double A tournament. The better team, acknowledged. Okay, in the polls, what we've seen on paper, Ken Palm, everything. Ken Palm's got them as the 8th best team in the country, St. Mary's. That's saying a lot for a team out of the WCC. Yep. Gonzaga, a lot of name and reputation. He's got them number 13. But still, you get a better price with St. Mary's, and a person would be foolish to ignore that, especially comparing those two basketball teams.
And in the Big East, so it's interesting, Villanova. See, Villanova and Duke, and again, like you said, Duke still might be able to do something, but look, you have Villanova and Duke, these programs, they lose their coaches, and it's just amazing how quickly that happens. Villanova not making the tournament unless they make a serious run. They had a big win last night, I think it was, or a couple of nights ago. When did they beat Xavier?
I think it was, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, this, at least you know that they're battle-tested enough, because even the bottom teams, there's really only a couple of really bad teams and really only one pitiful team in Georgetown. So every night they're pretty much playing pretty tough games against other teams. So, whether it's Creighton, UConn, Xavier, Providence, Marquette, I would bet that one of those teams makes the Final Four. Definitely the Elite Eight.
I like the way you think, and it's one of the reasons I made one of my plays. I haven't made a lot of early plays here, but I mentioned Duke. I bought them for the price. I bought Connecticut. I'm sorry, not Connecticut. Connecticut's probably going to lead the pack here, but I bought Creighton for the price. I like the makeup of this basketball team here, and they're the type of a team to me that epitomizes what a mid-major is all about. Type of a team that could win this tournament and continue to keep moving forward with a lot of momentum here. You can throw a blanket over 5 teams in the Big East Conference here. Take any one of those 5 for a futures bet, and you're not holding a bad ticket at all.
Yeah, because I was taking a look at Creighton going through their what really impresses you about Creighton, they went on a 6-game losing streak during the season, but they had 4. They had 4 losses out of the 6 were by 5 points or less.
Yeah,
and they were to teams like Arizona, Texas, and Arizona State, all tournament teams, especially the top 2 I mentioned. So
yeah, you love stuff like that. That's what goes into looking and searching and ferreting out these potential mid-major troublemakers, and that's exactly what Creighton could do. When we do our March Madness tournament guide at the end of the season here, that's one of the things we do is we look at how they fared against other fellow tournament teams and what were the closeness of those basketball games, because you could be 8-6 against other fellow tournament teams, but if 4 of those 6 losses were by 4 or fewer points, that's very, very meaningful. Yep. And that's the box that Creighton's going to be checking this year.
And Marquette beat Baylor by 26, and they only lost by 5 to Purdue. So, and this is Shaka Smart's team. So Shaka Smart didn't work out in Texas, and it's working out in Marquette. And speaking of Texas, I mean, that situation, they are definitely an interest to me because of how they've overcome the loss of their coach. That was a very difficult situation. Who knows what's going to happen if Beard is going to end up getting convicted, whatever the case may be. But they beat Gonzaga, they beat Creighton, so they've had a couple of decent wins. But I thought they were going to be in big trouble because Beard is such a good coach and a difference maker. I thought they were going to be in big trouble, and they have not fallen apart. And that, I think, is the type of grit that you really need to see from these types of schools, because Texas has been a program, especially when Rick Barnes was there. Texas has been a program that has really just not been able to get over the hump. And they've had chances. They just haven't been able to do it. And who knows? Maybe this is their year.
It's going to be interesting to see because the charges were dropped against Beard, by the way.
Oh, they were? Okay.
Yes, they were. Okay. So now that they've been dropped and he is a free man, per se, what happens? Does he go after the university and files a suit for firing for the wrong reasons? Will he be highly coveted at other schools? Probably so.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, his record indicates as much. But you don't want to kind of mess with the momentum that they've had since he's left either,
True.
like you said. So interesting saga going on there in Texas. We could probably talk a whole hour about the teams inside the Big 12 conference and what they've done and what they've accumulated, what they're capable of doing here. I mentioned TCU earlier. We haven't even hit on Kansas State, who is a bit of an upstart team here that has been in every game they've played thus far this basketball season here.
Yeah, you got an Iowa State, and the thing is, and this is why I've said I feel like it's a long season, because what's happening is in this Big 12 and in the Big 10 is they're playing each other. So one of the teams or two of the teams will, for a 2-week period, will go on a run, and then they'll go on a negative run for 2 weeks because the schedule is just so tough and they keep beating each other up. So it's very hard to tell if there is a team besides maybe Kansas, because you have to put Kansas. I mean, I would have put Baylor there, but like I said, I think Baylor's overrated. So I think Kansas is clearly the team to beat again. But the question is are they still as good as the conference is? Do they have a team that is so good, which I don't think they do, that you just feel like, okay, yeah, Kansas, one of these teams, best conference, they'll win the national championship. That's why I think this bracket that we're going to see next month is going to be so important, maybe more important than ever, because you're just going to be able to who gets the breaks, who gets the really tough regions, because there's so many tough teams out there. But then there are also a part of the country where, hey, you know what? I think we have a break here. So especially when you don't have that dominant team, like for instance, if you have Houston and Alabama, people say, yeah, those are the two best teams. Well, what about the other two regions? So whoever's in those other two regions, those are the regions you want to take a look at as far as who could possibly make a run.
While we're talking about the teams that can make a run, and we're hitting a lot on the Big 12, and deservedly so. You look at what the NCAA tournament weighs as the quad one wins, the victories in their record against quad one teams. The team that leads the country is Kansas, 13-5 in their quad one games. Texas, the second best team in the Big 12, 9-6,
okay,
and Kansas State 8-5. So you've got three teams inside the Big 12 conference that rank in the top 10 in quad one wins. Maybe, I think that it's going to go a long, long ways towards determining that, but I want to see how it all shifts out by the end of the season here. You've got some teams that are just flat out ugly. We all know about North Carolina and what they haven't done this year. They haven't beat a quad one team.
Yeah, that's crazy.
9 times 9 losses.
Yeah.
My goodness. Jim Boeheim, 7 games against quad one teams. He hasn't won one of them.
That's crazy.
What's going on there?
Yeah.
Notre Dame, 0-6.
Yeah. He's gone. Bray.
It's kind of puzzling here.
He's going. So.
Yep, exactly. But Miami of Florida, 7-4 in those quad one games. So, and they bring a little bit to the table. But one sleeper team I'm going to throw at you here that's done very, very well in quad one games, that comes out of a relatively what is being perceived to be a weak conference here, is Northwestern. They're on the move right now. They're 7-4 in their 11 quad one games right now, and Ken Pom does not have them in amongst his top 6 teams in the Big Ten. I think that will change, because I think what Northwestern is doing are some good things here right now. And I think some of these other teams, the Indianas, the Rutgers, the Illinois, the Michigan States, they're all clumped together.
Yeah, they're all the same, yeah.
Right, all clumped together, and Northwestern's waiting to take and leapfrog any one of those four teams.
Yeah, that's the kind of story you can get behind.
Yes.
A team like Northwestern making a Sweet 16 run of the tournament. And
Right.
speaking of teams that have, fallen out, um, we mentioned a few of them in the ACC already. How about Louisville and Florida State? I mean, Louisville. At least, see, with Louisville, it's a coaching thing. I can just go, not that maybe it's fair, but I can go, all right, look at the coach. Okay, he has no proven track record. But Florida State, I mean, Leonard Hamilton, I mean, they were supposed to be a decent team this year, and they're just terrible. It's just, see, this is why I know for sure we've reached that point, because I think what's happening is that there just not enough talented kids in this country anymore. You keep shipping them off to the pros early, and sooner or later, it's going to make an impact at college. It just has to. It's just fact. And we finally have gotten there. And that's why I think that, like, when schools like Florida State, or like you said, Duke, even if they have these really good 4-star, 5-star recruits, but okay, well, but that, say, 4-star or 5-star this year probably would have been a 3-star 10 years ago, or even just 5 years ago. But now they're a 4 or 5-star because look at who they're being compared to.
Well, the watering down of the college basketball player, the players that are there 1 year and they're gone. We're going to see that Alabama, Brandon Miller, the same way. What makes me chuckle a little bit is in my days when I used to go to the Cavaliers games and I had these Jack Nicholson seats and we would sit on them, and all the seats on the floor, they all had this NBA message on them, and the NBA message was "Stay in school." So in other
That
words,
didn't work.
yeah, don't do as we do.
Yeah.
Do as we're saying. Don't do as we do.
Typical.
The NBA.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, and look, I know it's not going to change, and it's unfortunate, but this is the way it is, and you're also seeing the impact, obviously, in the NBA as well. And as college basketball gets, see, why I still love college basketball so much, though, is because of, and now I'm going to love it even more because of all the parity. For the NBA, though, that's going to be I don't know when it's going to happen, but there is going to be a time in the next 5, 10, 15 years where the NBA is in big trouble, because those guys are going to be retiring. And then even now I hear these kids that are in the NBA, and I'm like, who are these guys? I mean, how did that guy make the team when 10 years ago he wouldn't have even been a D-leaguer? It's not going to be good in the NBA soon.
Well, if they keep putting events on like the NBA All-Star Game, it's going to happen sooner than later. That was a complete farce to have to sit through and watch that. And the only thing I'm glad of is I didn't have to buy a ticket
Imagine
to pay to watch that. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that was the lowest rating ever in NBA history for All-Star games. No surprise.
Yeah, it's not going to get any better.
No.
All right, so I've this is the last before we go, and we're going to get more deep into teams to target, like under the radar teams, and not necessarily teams that we think have a chance to win a championship. But keep in mind, you can go and wager on teams to win their region. And I think this year, again, with all the parity, I think this is going to be a great year. And I don't usually do the region wagering, but I think this is going to be a great year for region wagering, because you just have to win the 4 games compared to the 6, and that could be a big deal, especially for some of these teams. But even if we don't make that type of run, and you want a couple of teams and maybe can make it to the Sweet 16, I'm going to give you 3 teams, that maybe 4 right now that I'm looking at.
To make the Sweet 16?
To make the Sweet 16 as a surprise type of Cinderella kind of deal.
Yeah,
one is in your own backyard, Florida Atlantic.
Yep.
2 is Nevada, because I think I really like those top 3 or 4 teams in the Mountain West. They've dominated that conference this year. New Mexico's fallen off, but Nevada, San Diego State, Utah State, and I forget who the other team is, but that conference I think is is uh, is going to have one team maybe that might be able to make a run, and that's even surprised. They expected Wyoming to have a good year this year, and they've been very disappointing, and yet it really hasn't mattered. But uh, Nevada's the team that I'm really looking out for that I think could make the type of run that maybe gets them, who knows, maybe to the Elite Eight. That's Steve Alford's team. And the other two teams, one is Pitt. I like Pitt. I like what they've done. Now, I think they've hit a sort of like I was saying, maybe they've hit a little bit of a wall, but I think Pitt could be interesting come tournament time. And then the biggest one, the biggest Cinderella, is from the Missouri Valley. It's Drake. So Drake is like my little pet, like Cinderella, like mid-major / major, because the Missouri Valley is now looked at as almost like a major now in college basketball. So, but they're still like power mid-major. So that would probably be my one power mid-major team I'm going to back is Drake. Obviously, though, they're going to have to win the tournament. More than likely, who knows? I don't know what I haven't looked to find out whether or not they have to win. I'm sure they usually from the Missouri Valley, you got to win in order to make it. But if Drake wins their conference, Bradley's a good team, so it's not going to be easy. But I think if Drake makes it through, I think they're going to be a team that if they get a lucky draw in the tournament, keep an eye on them.
Well, you mentioned two teams you mentioned here. I was going to call out, and you got to them just a little bit ahead of me, but Nevada, number 33 in the Ken Pound rankings. Okay, 33rd best team. That says a lot.
That's solid.
Yes, it is. Florida Atlantic, number 40 in the top 40. Yep. So he's onto those teams as well, and they're teams that are very, very deserving. I'm going to give you a couple of long shots for the pocket. These are teams that really don't maybe check every box, but I like coaching, and I like a little bit about what's going on. And one of them I sort of shared with you earlier was Duke. I bought them at 50 to 1 early. And another one I bought was West Virginia with Bob Huggins. And when I bought him when their star player, Stevenson, had been out of the lineup, and he's back in the lineup, okay? And he comes back in the lineup, and what do? They reel off 4 straight wins, okay? Again, a team that comes out of a conference where there's going to be a slugfest going on there, and Bob Huggins is the kind of a guy that if he can get this attention of this basketball team, he can be in every game that he plays here. And if he makes the March Madness tournament, if he makes it, he can make it to the Sweet 16.
There you go. That's the thing. They got to make it. But I think whether you're West Virginia or Texas Tech or even Oklahoma State, I think they're going to give those teams a break, even though they might be 3 games under 500 in the conference regular season. They're going to say the conference is so tough that's okay. You could still get in if you're like West Virginia, one of those teams, because West Virginia still has a lot of work to do.
Yes, they do. There's no question, but I think they have the potential.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Right. So I bought them as a pretty long price, 75 to 1. So we'll see what happens. There's a lot we'll be talking about between now and when we get into the college conference tournaments, and the prices will be coming in the fold a little bit better here. But right now, before we go any deeper here, that's sort of where we looked at, and I agree with both your FAU and your Nevada sides. I think those are 2 excellent sides as well.
It'd be nice if Miami and Florida Atlantic, maybe they'll be in the same region.
Yeah, how about that, huh?
See if they do that or not. Again, next week, we will start taking a look at the conference tournaments. So, matter of fact, the conference tournaments begin, I believe it's Tuesday. So they do kick off before our next show. I don't think I have the exact date here. But it is going to be, I believe, next Tuesday, because it's always like the last day or 2 of the month. One of these conferences kicks off their conference tournament play. And the Missouri Valley is always like the earliest of the mid-majors. So they're usually early March to get going. But again, we'll talk next week. We'll be able to start previewing the conference tournaments. And then we're only a couple of weeks away from Selection Sunday, because it happens quick. Once these conference tournaments start, it'll go by really fast, and just makes March just an awesome month of the season. So Looking forward to it, Mark. This is the season we gotta cash in this season, Mark. You know.
Well, there's a lot of value to be out there and
Yep.
got out there right now, and I think this is exactly what we look for. This type of situation that we're seeing, and we'll be ferreting out these teams between now and when the tournament starts.
And you're going to be talking about obviously the tournament on the Playbook Experts YouTube channel
For sure.
with Victor King. Of course, Jim Feist will be there. He already gave some future dark horses. So you can check that out on the Experts channel, the Playbook Experts channel. Obviously, we have the link in the description area on this channel. Andy Isco reports live from Las Vegas. He had a take on the seedings that came out that you talked about, the top 16. So you guys are going to be talking wall to wall, not just college basketball, but NBA as well. But obviously, once you get into March, I'm sure you guys are going to spend a lot more time on college basketball.
Yeah, we're going to be hooping it up. There's no question about that.
Thanks, Mark. We'll talk to you again next week. Good to talk to you again.
Likewise, my pleasure as always, Greg. Be well, stay safe, and I'll catch you next week.